Sit!
Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast Injury Edition. This is our Monday morning show to talk injuries. I'm Rich Dotson. He's Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
Yeah, so we're here as we close out Week 8. We still got the Monday night game tonight. The Pittsburgh Steelers versus the New York Giants, and hopefully we're becoming that one healthy. We had a couple more hiccups this week, not as bad as the catastrophe of last week, but we definitely got some guys to kind of talk about. Some things we still don't know as well, so we'll talk about that. Talk that out. One didn't look good, I guess, to say the least. But let's talk about some of these injuries, Matt. Let's dive in here and see where we're at as we enter Week 9 and inch closer, as the conversation is really going to start here for over the next couple weeks as we inch closer and closer to the playoffs.
All right, so let's get it kicked off here with the quarterbacks as usual. First one we're going to talk about is Jordan Love, and he went down with a groin injury in this game. Obviously, he kind of played through it for a little bit, and then he wasn't able to finish. Malik Willis finished up that game and pulled off the victory there for Green Bay. We don't know the severity of this one. This is one of those ones that's kind of still up in the air. I believe this is the same leg as the knee injury, and you know, who knows if he's favoring it kind of goofy because
it's a groin is what it is.
Right. No, I know.
Strain.
You know, things kind of travel around when you're overcompensating for one little thing, maybe tweak something in a different area in that same leg. So we'll see. It's not believed to be long-term, which is good news, but we don't know kind of the time frame quite yet on this injury.
So Malik Willis is going to be the starting quarterback who's looked pretty good in the system. LaFleur's got a really good system there, and it shows when a backup like Malik Willis come in there and execute it. This time frame usually is about 2 weeks. It's usually a groin strain for a quarterback. It's usually about a 2 week window. And this all lines up perfectly for Jordan Love. Like, they have one game this week. They have a week 10 bye, so they're off in week 10. So without a question, I heard he couldn't even move. Like, he went back in and then he came back out. Like, he couldn't even move afterwards. So it's pretty safe to say he's going to miss this week, miss the bye week, and then probably come back week 11, worst case week 12. So it's a 3 week window, but you know, as we're inching closer for a quarterback to just miss time as well, 2 games when we only have, after this week, 5 games left. Like, all
right, it's a big chunk, and it's a big difference maker, right?
Yeah, and you have to start compensating, right, for this. Like, if Jordan Love's your only quarterback, if you're a 1 QB league, if you're in Superflex and he's your quarterback 1 and your quarterback 2 is anybody who's just mid, like, you depending where your record is, like, this is where, early in the season where I've talked about throughout the years, where like, hey, sometimes it's just small moves that win championships, right? Like, identifying your weaknesses, where you're shallow at, like maybe it's quarterback, maybe it's running back, and maybe it's wide receiver, and kind of finding some of those ancillary pieces that aren't starters for your team, but on these teams that are like not trying to compete and willing to give up these pieces for really cheap, like 3rd, 4th round picks. Maybe you could have got ahead of the Darnell Mooney trade wave, who just put up another big week. Like, adding those pieces just in case, right? Like, to get you, importantly, get through the bye, but in case something like this comes up, like early on the season, like, oh, it's 2 weeks, I can get through it. Like, now it's like, man, like, I am 5-3 and the whole league's 5-3 and I have the most points. But if I lose these next 2 weeks, there's a chance I might miss the playoffs. And then you're sitting there going, oh, dude, how'd I miss the playoffs? Because, I of course, I had the second most points in the league and I finish, in 7th place. Like, how often does that happen, right? Like, you have the points, but you don't have the record to get in. And it's
tale as old as
time
like
right
this.
There. Yeah, it's little things like this. So with Jordan Love going down, obviously there's some quarterbacks out there. You probably get Aaron Rodgers for cheap from a non-contender. I got him in a Superflex league I got Aaron Rodgers. I picked him up. Same thing. I need a second quarterback. My quarterback got hurt. It was Purvey McGurvey, and he was hurt. So I picked up Aaron Rodgers. I didn't get him for a 3rd round pick. And, is he a stud? No. But remember, picking up Jameis Winston, picking up Aaron Rodgers, picking up Andy Dalton, who probably be pretty cheap right now, or anything along those lines, like even a subpar quarterback, just an average quarterback, he's going to give you right around 15 points per game, which is like low end wide receiver one production there. So it really is such an important position where you just can't let it go by the wayside and say, I can wait this out, because the next thing you know, we're in week 13 and you need a win. And J.K. Dobbins rushes for 180 yards and 4 touchdowns, and you lose to a team that you shouldn't have lost to. And now you missed the playoffs with the second most points in the league. And it's all because of one game, right? And like, it's so easy to forget that early in the year too. Like, it's just one game. It's a long season. Yes, it is. It is. But when you only play 14 games altogether, every game counts.
Everyone matters. Yeah, no doubt about it, man.
So even going out there, like the best move is just go get Malik Willis if you can, like if you Jordan Love, but like you definitely want to start filling the voids here with these buys. It's no longer like, hey, let's just wait out a couple weeks. Like I just want to, there is a sense of urgency here if you're a contender to get in there. And more importantly, like if you're even a first seed or second seed, like how important that first round buy is. Like that is such an important place to be, because same thing, you don't want to like just missed that first round bye. You get the most points in the league, and you let this window go by because you were in first place, end up in third place because you lost 2 games in a row because of this. And then same thing, first game of the playoffs, you face J.K. Dobbins. He has 180 yards, or say it's Breece Hall, and he goes for 180 yards and 5 touchdowns at the Alvin Kamara game on Christmas, and you lose. You're like, of course this happens to me. Mama. Everything is the woe is me
Christmas.
kind of thing in football. Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
No doubt. And I like the Malik Willis, try to go out there and acquire him because he's competing. He's looking good, and he doesn't have any standalone value. So that whoever has that person, as long as they're not also, in the market for a quarterback right now, they should be willing to move a player like Malik Willis who just doesn't have value unless Jordan Love goes down. And now all of a sudden he does. So that's when you should be cashing in on a guy like Malik Willis. So, what's nice if you do acquire him, he's a guy that's going to add some rushing upside, had 23 yards on 4 carries in this past game. And in relief, he had double-digit points. He had 10.1 points in this is our league that has kind of goofy scoring. But right around 10 points, he's going to get you, in around a half of football. So I think, once he's in there for a full week and game plan for it and all that kind of good stuff, he's going to, hit the ground running with the Green Bay offense. That said, let's move on to the next player on the list, and Drake Maye, the young stud quarterback who's been looking pretty good and feeding my guy Hunter Henry, goes down with a concussion in this one. Obviously the concussions vary from player to player. Some guys can bounce right back and kind of return to action pretty quickly. Some guys are out 6 weeks, like Tua. So this is going to be our first known case for Drake Maye here in the NFL with the concussion. So we're going to have to play this one by ear and kind of figure out what he's doing. Jacoby Brissett came in, obviously, and everyone kind of, I feel like, took a downturn in this game compared to what has been happening the past couple of weeks with Drake Maye under center.
Yeah, 95% of players are going to miss the following week once they get concussed. That's usually the protocol. By the time they get cleared through everything, they miss a whole week of practice, so they usually don't play. Upside here is Drake Maye's looked really good in his limit starts. And when you look good in this offense with these weapons around you, the future is bright. You can already put a check mark next to Drake Maye as somebody that you should be in Superflex leagues aggressively trying to get if there's any windows that open, because the window looks high. They're going to have a high draft pick. This is a team most likely for the next 2 years. They also have a big salary cap influx coming for the following year too, so they could really add a lot of weapons like a T. Higgins or something along those lines for Drake Maye to go with that draft capital as well. And this is going to be a team they're going to have to build around Drake Maye first, right? Whether it be the offensive line, obviously weapons. And for me, this is a great asset. I've loved what I've seen of Drake Maye so far. Happy with all the shares I got, and he's on my list at least of like, okay, like where's my team at? And honestly, he falls in that category. It doesn't matter where your team is, rebuild, contender. Like, let me see, because I like to like put down players, like definitely rookie, second year players that maybe they showed me enough in the early year. Like Jaden Reed fell in that category last year. I talked him up a lot, and kind of some, like put these guys, like I like to keep track of the guys so I don't forget, like that I want to aggressively try to go by. And usually there's like windows, and whether that window is like now for people to try to look for capital, which is not going to be for Drake Maye, but like usually in the off season, I try to like formulate a plan, formulate offers to acquire certain players, and Drake Maye definitely falls in that the category. It looks, and honestly, you can argue he's looked better than even Caleb Williams at times, which is crazy to say. And the price point on those two players are going to be drastically different, right? Like,
yeah.
And Drake Maye what is Drake Maye? 21 years old, I think, somewhere in there. 22 at the most.
Let me see. He is 22. August 30th, he turned 22.
Just turned 22. Yeah, that's Dynasty gold right there, baby. Yeah, it's just good to see those quarterbacks that come out and they look good early.
Yeah, no doubt
always it's a good sign for the future.
Yeah, and to your point, he's a better thrower of the football than most guys coming out of this draft. The only issue I had with him was the elongated kind of delivery that I thought maybe would be an issue for pass rushers. It hasn't seemed to be an issue. So Drake Maye, wheels up for this guy. I think for the future, everything looks good. As long as that O-line can protect, I don't see a problem with anything going forward with him. And obviously, as soon as he came into the game, he kind of elevated everyone around him, kind of making Hunter Henry a viable play, and guys like Demario Douglas and even Keyshawn Boutte.
Yeah, playable action.
Playable guys. But while he's gone,
Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, no kidding.
I liked how I was on the show last week. I just laughed uncontrollably, like how bad that guy is. You're going to look that bad. I'm like, he's terrible. He gets benched for Jake Hayner. Yes. I don't mean to laugh at other people's misfortunes.
No, but he
at the same time I do, because he's a game I play.
Yeah, he's a replaceable level guy in the NFL. Yeah. So
I wouldn't do that to his face, but in fantasy land, I would.
Dude, great college quarterback. Very good real life quarterback, way better than either one of us could ever throw the football. But at the same time, he's just a replaceable level NFL quarterback. So,
dude, you made it to the NFL at quarterback. Like you're one of a very few people in the world that could do what you do. It's just unfortunately like that position calls for like you have to be above and beyond. You know what I mean? Like it's so fragile of a position. It's so hard to play that position. It's so hard.
So you mentioned
that comes ridicule.
Yeah, no doubt. And like you mentioned, above and beyond, that kind of brings me to the last guy here. Patrick Mahomes just rolled an ankle. I want to mention it. He was able to play right through it and didn't even miss a snap or anything. But ankles are goofy. Carson Wentz is his backup just in case he doesn't practice or something goofy this week. Carson Wentz probably on a lot of people's waiver wire. Just want to mention him before we move on to the running back position.
Thank you.
So moving on, Jordan Mason of the San Francisco 49ers obviously has been playing through this AC joint issue in his shoulder. Wasn't able to finish this game. Isaac Garando came in. Garando. Whatever. You say tomato, I say tomato, came in.
You say sayonara because Christian McCaffrey's back in week 10. So
that is the most important part about this whole thing. Christian's back. But Isaac looked good in his stead, though, in Jordan Mason's stead. 14 carries, 85 yards, and a touchdown. So and it had 3 catches for 17 yards. So a guy that shouldn't be on waiver wires just in case Christian McCaffrey re-aggravates or anything like that. So obviously that's a name that obviously he's a rookie, so most people it's on a taxi squad most likely, but you never know. He could have fallen through the cracks.
Yeah, some shallow leagues possibly. Not a player we ever loved on his tape. Former track guy, real big, real fast, blew up the combine. Just didn't have those running back instincts that we loved on college tape. You get into San Francisco, anybody like in the Nerd Score Plus, San Francisco should just come with a plus, right? Like in that system, you're gonna be in a best position to succeed. He's looked good, which he should, right? He's an explosive athlete. Like Kyle Shanahan loves those kind of guys, and he fits that system pretty well. But yeah, no long-term value there for the most part because Jordan Mason is the backup. He had the AC left shoulder re-injury essentially. But with the bye week, he should be fine. Yep. And if not, it's still going to be the Christian McCaffrey show. But yeah, I guess, the bright side of Isaac Garando is 2 things. Like, one, if you drafted him, it's kind of like having like a Braylon Allen effect, right? Like you feel comfortable having him on your roster. Like, we talk about like when you get past that second round, sometimes it's really good just to invest in running backs for the most part, because you know what you have early, right? Like it doesn't make sense to have like 12 wide receivers on your roster. Like nobody wants a wide receiver 3, barely like legit wide receiver 3s, like legitimate wide receiver 34 overall. Like it's hard to get value out of those, let alone wide receiver 48, 50, something on those lines. It's no need the roster clog those guys. Like the quickest path to success and value and, pen to the paper is a running back position. And you know what you got pretty early. And so far, like, you know what you got as Isaac Guerrero, he's a roster bring up right off the taxi squad. Like he's a hold. If you're a contender, like if Christian McCaffrey goes down, there's no Jordan Mason. You could start, right away, you could start Isaac Guerrero in this offense. So that's a very high upside there. If you have Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, at some point when this game wears off, it's probably a good idea to go out there and try and acquire him and have him on your roster because he holds value moving forward.
No doubt about it. And like you said, the bye week is this week for them. So either way, I would expect Jordan Mason to be healing up and Christian McCaffrey to be healing up, but you never know. Weird week. Welcome 8, back, only 2 teams. It's San Francisco and the Steelers are on bye this week. So there should be a lot of folks available, which is a good sign for people who have got injuries. Moving on to the next injury, Kendre Miller, New Orleans Saints, goes down with a hamstring injury. I don't know what this falls under because it's Kendre Miller, and he was already told if you can't make the team from the tub, basically, at the beginning of the year, and here he is, after he just came back off our IR, he's back on the shelf. So
zero value asset, zero value. I feel so bad, dude. Somebody offered me a third when he came off the injury list, and I was a dumbass. And it was like a late third. I asked for his third, which was gonna be like a mid third, instead of just accepting.
You try to squeak more out of it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, dude. I'm an idiot. Like I'm an idiot because I should have taken a fourth for Kendre Miller.
Yep.
And I didn't do it. And then literally after I did that, they took Christian McCaffrey off IR, like they're designated for return. Literally right after. And he's like, oh, Christian McCaffrey. He wrote back, LO, Christian McCaffrey designated for return. And the offer was gone. And I'm just like, oh, man. See what happens when you get a little fancy-pantsy? See what happens? You get a little greedy? Greed is such a sin. Oh, it's such a sin, man. It's so – and it could be – greed could blow up so many deals, dude, for like – and definitely when that greed is for like such like – an irrelevant component of the deal, like a third round pick. Like, well, how many times do we say, like, when a person asks you for a third in return of a deal that you want to make, you should always just immediately throw in that third no matter what. Because it's
no matter what. Here you go. You can have it.
Almost zero value. It really does. It holds almost zero value.
I'll find that value back somewhere in return somewhere else. I don't care.
Yeah, off the waiver wire. Yeah, you can find a third round replacement literally off a waiver wire in a deep league at times. Like, look, there's Lucas Krull, the tight end for the Broncos. Like, he scored 3 points. Yay!
Oh, Adam Troutman this week went berserk. Awesome.
So I messed that up. But yeah, Kendre Miller, dude. Like, I mean. Honestly, like, does he hold any value at this point whatsoever? He's a walk-in IR machine, and his head coach, who's going to get fired anyways at the end of this year, hates him.
Yep. No, he doesn't have any value. Jamal Williams is the backup there. I don't know. It's the Alvin Kamara show. It doesn't matter.
They just extended him. I saw somebody's tweet like, "Oh, I can't wait to hear Matt's podcast on Tuesday to see what he says about the Saints." Alvin Kamara getting extended. And I saw somebody else comment on it. I was literally thinking the exact same thing. We'll say that for tomorrow's show.
They just keep doing it. That's fine, New Orleans. Just keep burying yourself.
Talk about it for like 6 years. Like, they're gonna come out. They're gonna pay this piper one day.
It's gonna happen.
6 years later, he just extended a 29-year-old running back for $22 million guaranteed.
Oh,
the GOAT, though. The GOAT. So
I mean, he is good. They're holding this thing together with duct tape and chewing gum, but
yeah,
it's good.
Okay.
All
They're going to
right,
draft another Kendre Miller.
Of course they are. All right, let's move on to the wide receiver position. This is a big time injury here. Right off the rip, we're going to go Stefon Diggs. Knee injury on a non-contact.
I saw it too.
So did I, man. I was watching that. I was watching it on Red Zone, and I just happened to show it right on there. And that's not what you're looking for ever, man. We don't have any MRI results or anything like that. That stuff is coming. We don't have results, so we won't know for sure. But listen, we all know what happens on non-contact things. Usually, it's the ACL just kind of going out. We'll see if that is the case. Obviously, Tank Dell is the immediate beneficiary. Guys behind him, Xavier Hutchinson, maybe John Mechie gets a look finally, and Robert Woods, Bob Trees is also on that roster. Nico Collins is like what, 2 weeks or a week away or 2 weeks away. Week 10,
somewhere around there. Hopefully, I mean, we have no idea. I said like a 4-week injury there, so I think they might designate him for return. That could be right away. It could be a week. But I think 2, maybe another week. I think that's it. He's been IR for a while, so. If I had to guess, Matt, I mean, Tank Dell came in, he looked okay, but it's probably an ACL because it was his plant foot. You saw it buckle inward slightly because I rewinded it there to see, and then he immediately grabbed it afterwards, and you're like, I immediately was like, oh, that's his ACL. He's done for the year. And I was like, I wish I would have offloaded all. He's a wide receiver 1, so this hurts. Like teams pretty drastically. Hurts his free agency case too, so he'll be pretty cheap. But at the same time, this might. I mean, Diggs look pretty good, right? So he'll probably come back on a 1-year prove-it deal. I think again, if you have a notepad like I do of like players you want to like just keep notes on it, like to kind of circle back to because it's a long season to go aggressively buy. Like you could probably get a 31-year-old Stefon Diggs come off an ACL injury for pretty damn cheap. Like come draft day.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah,
and for how good he looked, I mean, it's the juice is probably worth the squeeze for a contender when
you're
offering a late second.
I was gonna say, is he worth a late second? That was exactly what I was gonna ask. So yes,
I mean, you're probably not gonna get him for a third. And I guess I'll know better when we do this rookie class breakdowns, like where the receivers sit. But like even then, if you're talking pick, 22, 23, 24, like. Why not gamble on something? Like it's a very short-term investment, but like, again, you're talking about a late second-round pick. Like the odds of that even be remotely valuable are pretty slim. And at least it's Stefon Diggs. Like I'll take 1 year of Stefon Diggs being wide receiver 15 over a guy who's wide receiver, 33 to 43 on a year in, year out basis.
And another thing, obviously, we love doing is maybe packaging him with a second round pick and getting a guy's first round pick, right? So you're moving up maybe 5 picks or something like that. Or moving if you don't have him, maybe you have a back half of the first round draft pick, you give your first and get a guy like Diggs and the player's second. So you're just moving back maybe 5 spots and picking up a guy like Diggs. Who knows if the draft is going to play out that way because it's too early in the process, but that might be a deal worth making as well. At some
depends
point.
who's there at the end of the first. If there's nobody you love and you get to scoop back, like for you, like you loved Xavier Legette, right? Like at 111, you knew you could get Xavier Legette at 1-4. So like if somebody has a team, their team sucked, and you're like, hey dude, like you want to move here to 111? Just give me Diggs and 2-4, and I'm good. And you're still going to sex the player. I do it that way. That's the only way I'd probably do it for Diggs. Again, it's a gamble. He's old, coming off ACL, but definitely worth a shot. It's worth exploring that avenue, I guess.
And that scenario is exactly what I was thinking. If there's a guy you can get a little bit later that you were going to pick at 111 anyway, just do that kind of move.
And even now, man, like if you're a contender, like say you're mid-range, right? And say you just lost Jordan Love and like maybe you feel like you could kind of like injuries were kind of like were your albatross this year, like injuries. Like you have a pretty solid team. You could probably contend again next year, but for some reason you're just out of it this year. If you have another receiver and you look ahead of it and see what Stefon Diggs is most likely a contender because he's older. He was a wide receiver 1. Maybe you can just go get Diggs for somebody of like less value, right? Like maybe the DeAndre Hopkins in Kansas City, you could flip DeAndre Hopkins. Something like I'm talking about like, oh, you have to have DeAndre Hopkins. He has to have Kansas, but like something along those magnitude of like, you can offer a receiver off your roster that you don't love or have long-term value and just get Diggs because he doesn't help you win this year, which you don't want to do. And then you have the upside of next year. And if you can compete, sweet. If Diggs comes back and he's good and you're still not competing, maybe you can flip him for a second round pick at that point too. Like it's still some value to his name in that way as well. If you want to make that trade right now for a team that might be desperate that just lost Diggs that would start him, maybe there's a path to go ahead and get him as well.
Love it. All right, we're going to kind of lump three guys together here because they all play for the same team. Gabe Davis went down with a shoulder injury. We don't know the severity of it, but he wasn't able to finish the game. Brian Thomas.
It's the third time he did that, Matt. It's a third shoulder injury he's had, so he's probably going to actually miss some time.
Yeah, I would imagine. Brian Thomas, basically fell on the ball, it sounds like, and has a chest injury. He's going for an MRI. So who knows what this means? If it's
I saw something on Twitter right before we started
broken,
the show.
or if it's cartilage.
2 to 4 weeks, they said.
Okay. So there is something that results came out of that MRI.
Like literally right before we got on the show here. Let me see if I can bring up Adam.
Well, you look for that. I'll mention the third guy here, Christian Kirk.
Sorry.
Fractured his collarbone and is done for the year. So they really got hit hard here at the wide receiver position, Jacksonville, that is. Only guys left on their active roster, are Parker Washington and Tim Jones, both of whom have had some catches. I think where is he at?
Evan Ingram's number one.
Tim Jones had 1 reception for 20 yards, and Parker Washington 3 for 46. So Parker Washington is a guy that had a little bit of hype at the end of last year when he got in for injuries as well and looked good, kind of disappeared this year. But he's going to get an opportunity in the coming weeks to do some things. I think Parker Washington is a guy that, in the right scenario, as long as all three of these guys miss, then he could be a guy that you start and feel okay about. If obviously if Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis are back, then he kind of slides maybe to a flex type of play or something like that. But he's going to be mixed in. With Kirk gone, Parker Washington is kind of he's the 1-for-1 replacement for a guy like Christian Kirk. So I would expect him.
Yeah, I would guess they're all going to miss time here, Matt. Like I said, this is Gabe Davis. He's injured us now, re-injured this shoulder for the third time. So I think that would just tell you he's going to miss some time. Christian Kirk, who is really up in Adam Schefter's like trade deadline, it was him and Deontay Johnson. It looked like he was going to get traded, which would have been another good value for him. He's out for the year. That hurts. And right here, an hour ago from Jeremy Fowler, Schefter retweeted Jaguars wide receiver Brian Thomas can miss 2 to 4 weeks with a chest rim injury suffered Sunday per source. Scans today will determine the full extent and next steps, though. Thomas is also getting a second opinion. And Schefter retweeted that as well. So, yeah, you're right. Evan Ingram is going to get absolutely smothered in targets here, but I think Parker Washington's the only really good viable ad here. Tim Jones, check your waiver wire. He's certainly a waiver wire guy ad. You never know. You really don't know. It could easily be Tim Jones that falls in that category for a team that's probably going to be playing from a negative game script here. Just this is a team that just got devastated now at the receiver position, already in bad shape. It's going to be, I don't even know if Doug Peterson's going to make it out of this, alive.
It's starting to feel like this is one of those teams that's going to be moving on to, at the end of the season, which, it is what it is. They haven't met expectations there. They haven't looked great on his side of the ball that he specializes in. So I don't know if this is hey, the NFL has figured out Doug Peterson's kind of offense, and now it's not working as well, because there was a time when it was hot, you know what I mean, a few years back in Philly, but it's really not anymore. So it's just they might need a fresh face in there just to kind of revitalize things and maybe give a fresh look for their young QB that they've been looking to get the most out of.
And that Brian Thomas news just really sucks. I mean, he's sitting here, he's performing at a very high level, wide receiver 1 level. You most likely grabbed him as a contender, so the back half of the first. Like, this is like, it's literally like a dream scenario, right? Like, Ladd McConkey, somebody who I predict is going to put up wide receiver 1 numbers here soon. He had a big 29-point week as well. Like, when you can land those kind of guys, Brian Thomas, Ladd McConkey, add them to a contender team already, and you get that immediate return. Like, that's the difference between, pushing you over the edge of winning a championship and not. So to lose a guy like that again for 2 to 4 weeks, we just kind of talked about that Jordan Love time frame. Like, it really could put a damper in your overall, expectations for the year. But, whether it's now, it could be 2 weeks from now. Like I said, I had Chris Godwin, number 1 receiver, almost, when now it's Jamar Chase pretty easily. on a year, and it's just those are hard things to overcome. Like you don't replace players like that. It's not really feasible. So big loss there, and obviously if you have Trevor Lawrence, this hurts him as well. It's not like he came in and was lighting the world on fire there weeks 1 through 8, but at the same time, it just got significantly worse for him as well. For really somebody that's kind of like trying to show that he was worth that big contract there in Jacksonville, because so far he has not been worth all that money. But still, he was quarterback 1 after this week, like quarterback 12 on the year. So he's still producing. How will that affect him if you have Trevor Lawrence, who literally just came off his best game of the year too with 24.3 points? So a lot of moving parts here. Evan Ingram, a big winner. Check Tim Jones for the waiver wire, and then Parker Washington. Maybe he's on your waiver wire too. I doubt it, but it's worth a little fancy look at.
You never know. All right, moving on to the last 2 that we have. I'm going to go quick on the Olave one because it's kind of a lot to do about nothing. But Olave was evaluated for a concussion. Obviously, he ended up coming back in the game, having a big game, 8 catches, 107 yards. But considering that he missed week 7 with concussion and kind of has a history of concussions, I just wanted to put him on here in case he missed practice at all this week with kind of those delayed reaction or delayed onset of concussion-like symptoms. Just so if you have them, look out for it. Bub Memes and Mason Tipton are the only other guys like on this roster, basically. So if Olave doesn't play, that means there's a lot of targets because Olave got targeted 14 times last week. There are a lot of targets that are going to spread around between those 2 guys if Olave misses any time. If not, obviously it's wheels up for Olave because he is gobbling up because there's no one else there to throw to. And then the last player of today is Sterling.
2 wide receivers.
Who?
T. Higgins went the week with that quad strain.
Oh, I forgot about T. All right. Go ahead and mention since you got it down there.
Yeah, he strained, and it was in Friday. He strained it in his practice. So it's kind of a surprise there, which was cool. I saw a good stat. I can't remember who I saw it from. Like the stat line when T. Higgins misses, that's when like if T. Higgins misses, fire up Mike Gesicki. Like anytime like T. Higgins is not on the field, like Mike Gesicki eats. He did again this week. So he's probably going to miss. I mean, if he just did a Friday and it's a quad strain, I would guess that he's going to miss a little bit more time. I don't think they have a bye week. Do they this week?
No, it's only the Steelers and San Francisco that are on bye this week.
Yeah, I mean, imagine a quad strain, the same thing like a hamstring injury, like the Mike Evans effect. Like if you rush somebody back from that, like if he plays this week, like one, he probably won't be as effective, and it's such a high chance to re-injure it. Like you have to expect he'd probably miss this week as well. Could help out Jermaine Burton. The fire up play there is Mike Gesicki though. From what I wish I had the stats in front of me and I had the name of who said it out there, but I was reading in depth into it. Like I was reading the tweet and like watching like from the fantasy points data, like the stat line between the two of like when they show like Higgins is out when Gesicki does, and it's all at a very high level. So Gesicki is the play there with T. Higgins out, and then you were talking about Sterling Shepard.
Yeah, no, this week Gesicki 8 targets, 7 receptions, 73 yards. He did lose a fumble, but double digit numbers there. PPR 12.3 points. So a nice week for sure. And he had the second most targets on the team behind Ja'Marr Chase. So that, to your point, it was really a Mike Gesicki week, and it's hard to figure out when to play him because he's very up and down. So now you know, at least there's a tip off there a little bit. Play him when T. Higgins is down. That's a good tip.
And kudos to the consistability of Ja'Marr Chase for being wide receiver 1 overall, because that's what I've been waiting for it. I've been calling him out on it. I want to give him a shout out. I was like, I need to see Ja'Marr for me, and I've bumped him on my rankings. I've said when Ja'Marr Chase shows me consistently be a high-end wide receiver 1, which is top 4 guy, I will move on my rankings. He's wide receiver 1 overall. I even moved Ja'Marr Chase ahead of CeeDee Lamb.
That's silly. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Did you see he went berserk this week too, man?
He sure did, but Silly Rich does silly things. And if I'm going to put my name on it and come out there and call you out, then I'm going to give you the respect you deserve when you're wide receiver 1 overall. Again, you're splitting hairs, so it doesn't really make a difference to me. Like somebody can be like, oh, dude, you have Jamar Chase ranked ahead of CeeDee Lamb. Like, yeah, bro, one spot. It's called tears. Get some emotions.
Yeah, quit your crying. All right, so lastly, Sterling Shepard, he went down with a hamstring. Sterling Shepard wouldn't be a big note type of thing if it wasn't for Mike Evans also being down and Godwin being done for the season. So, that just bumps up other guys. Jalen McMillan, the rookie that I kind of liked, is going to get an extended look here. Trey Palmer, another guy from last year, and Raheem Jarrett came in and performed pretty nicely. Had 3 grabs for 58 yards.
Yeah.
3 targets.
Who was the man there, Matt? Remember when I was on the show last week? I was like, hey, you know what the move here is? Cade Otton is going to be the number 1 look there. And boy, was he ever.
10 targets, 9 receptions, 81 yards, and 2 touchdowns, man. So, yeah, he really was the showcase piece there in the absence of those other big guys. So,
I like McMillan here too, though. McMillan could have had a couple big plays. Like he was in line to have a couple big plays. The ball didn't go his way. So another good spot for him to come out and possibly make a name for himself here, because I mean, he needs to come up and step up in this absence here to show like, hey, he's a part of the future here. And when they let like Chris Godwin walk after this year,
no doubt about it, man.
They'll draft somebody and take his spot.
And Raheem Jarrett, fresh off of IR, this was the first week he was even active. So it was nice to see him kind of get 3 receptions, 58 yards, and kind of prove that he can be a piece in this offense as well. I think it's going to be a little hit and miss with all these guys because they're basically all young guys, and it's going to be hard to rely on them week to week. But not bad stashes. Kind of see how the dust settles or who is the cream that rises to the top here in the coming weeks before playoffs hit.
And with all these IR moves and stuff, everybody's got room on their roster this time of the year to pick up these kind of guys, just a stash, just to see. You never know. You never know when you find like a Victor Cruz or something along those lines that could come out of nowhere and be viable. And all you really need to be viable is for the rest of the year, to be honest with you. Like, and you hope for the future, but it's from nothing to something. And we talk about that too. Like nothing like picking up a guy off the waiver wire and then 3 weeks later selling him for like a 4th round pick.
I mean, these are the perfect opportunities that I'm talking about when we say, hey, throw in that 3rd round pick because you can make it up somewhere else. This is the kind of player that, one of these 3 guys, maybe Raheem Jarrett comes out of nowhere, and all of a sudden you get 3rd round value out of him at some point.
Yeah, and these are the perfect. I think these guys probably start the whole thing where like, you pick up a guy like Raheem off the waiver wire, and then you can go, hey man, like I'll give you Raheem and my 4th for your 3rd. Which again, you still got a 3rd round pick for like nothing here. So those are great moves as well. Why you make them? No tight end injuries on National Tight End Day yesterday, where the tight ends had the greatest weekend they've had in forever, a very long time. Like every one of them scored at a high level. In our old league, in our original Dynasty league, I was down a little bit, and I only had George Kittle left, and everybody had a great day. And with those injuries around, I'm like, dude, this is it. Kittle's going to help me out here. And I went from being down 10 points to up 26 points or something on those lines. I can't remember what it was. I had somebody else. So hopefully I still got Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson to face, but with no Andrew Thomas and Daniel Jones running for his life, I think I might be okay. We'll see. See.
Fingers crossed, right? Yeah.
I literally just killed myself. I'm 100% going to lose now.
Malik Neighbors, first play, 97-yard bomb. Here it
100%,
comes.
100%. 100%. Happens to me every time. It's no different than when somebody goes off on Thursday night and they score 35 points. You're like, yeah. And then the rest of your team comes up and they have corn on their face because they're a giant piece of doo-doo. And you're sitting there stinking up the place. So no tight end injuries, but we have an injury guy coming back. And that's one of the great ones. That's TJ Hockenson, should be active week 9. He was a game time decision here for week 8. So TJ Hockenson coming back. Don't expect a ton. He'll probably play about 60, 70% of the snaps coming this week. But hey, TJ Hawkinson's so good. He's still worth a consideration to get in there.
No doubt about it. If he's in, you have to think about playing him, even though some guys have been starting to perform there at the tight end position. If you've had, Hockenson, you've likely been kind of patchworking it for the rest of the season. So it'll be nice to have him back in the lineup.
Yeah, I have a lot. Listen, man, I have a lot of Hockenson shares, and I've been able to like kind of piece things. Like, I got ahead of it. Like, I got real aggressive going out there, guys I believed in, like Zach Ertz. Dulcich was one of them too. That one obviously flamed out. Obviously, when you take gambles like those, like guys that are like late round guys, like or cheap guys, like they're not 85% of those guys are going to flame out. But Zach Ertz so far looks like he has been a hit. Really liked him in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, so I was able to like offset that with like a guy like that, like Zach Ertz, and I feel pretty good about that. So, yeah, no injuries at tight end. Overall, losing Christian Kirk, just losing Brian Thomas for a couple of weeks, Jordan Love for a couple of weeks, not a horrible weekend. Hopefully Monday night carries over for that as we enter week 9, as we slowly inch our way through the bye weeks here. And everybody's got to be very present in their league right now. And note too, like, not just injuries to your team, like who had that player, what's happening, what's going on, like,
and the big ones to do that, go search out for the Stefon Diggs owner and the Christian Kirk owner, because those guys are down for the year. Specifically the Diggs owner, because they were likely contending and doing well. So see if you can fill that void with somebody on your team. I think that would be the smart move.
Yeah, you have to remember how important it is to be the first to act in Dynasty fantasy football, being proactive to offer those offers out there to like get those negotiations flying, because if not, you're going to be left by the wayside. And we say it all the time, like, oh, I would have made that deal, or I could give you a little bit more. My first would have been a little bit higher. Like, just got to be this is such a busy time of the year for trades. Like, and this is when people talk about graphs and windows, like, hey, when's the best time to trade for first? Now. Now is the time. Like, this window, the last couple windows is the time to really get out there and make yourself available for trades. And also know, like, this is, it kind of goes to show you why you if you're a contender and you might've been like 2-4, like, you don't give up at the same time, because Dynasty rosters, some people get a little bit inflated and they play, maybe they had an easy slate, right, with all those rebuilding teams, and some teams got a couple more wins than they should have. And you could tell, like, hey, I have 100 more points than this guy. Like, it's important to keep hammering at it, because with 5 more weeks, a 5-game swing could really get you into that top 6. And that's what you want to do there. So be aggressive, right? Like, this is the time of the year, both ways, in rebuild and in championship contention. Like, be aggressive over these next, I know it's 5 weeks left until like the end of the regular season, but things start to get a little bit more expensive as you go down the road. And also sometimes, like, you put yourself by the wayside because that team already made a move, right? Like, they're no longer, they already traded away the draft capital you want or the young players you want. So they're no longer a viable trade partner. So be aggressive, be active. Either way, more aggressive to getting a higher draft pick, more aggressive to making those playoffs and see what can happen. So we'll be back tomorrow with our regular show. Can't wait to talk and see what you may have to say about Alvin Kamara if Garrett puts in the show sheet. So we'll see you tomorrow. Nerd herd.
Adios.